Hey guys, Kyle here. So, just before the show starts, I wanted to mention our Patreon. You can pay us $1 a month as a thank you, as a tip. You can pay $2 a month to get access to one of our bonus content shows, episodes 2 days early, and a secret Discord chat where all of our Patreon donors get to go and hang out and talk with us directly. Then there's a $5 tier that you can donate to get access to a whole bunch more content. We have multiple bonus episodes on there. So please check it out. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We don't advertise, we don't make money. So check it out and throw some money if you think that would be cool. Thanks. Welcome to It Gets Weird, our comedy show where we explore the unusual, the unbelievable, and the unexplained to try and make your world a little weirder. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Niall. And Kyle, it's a fucking hot one this week.
Oh yeah.
I want to check in with you. We've had air conditioning talk before. I just want to do a quick checkup. I feel like it's time that we do this and just see how are you feeling from a temperature direction?
Oh, I've been doing great. I mean, we finally had our AC repaired. Now, because our house is old and not great at actually,
Insulating?
Yeah, it's like you'll walk into certain rooms and be like, oh, that's about 10, 15 degrees warmer than the rest of the house. But, I'm making do with it. It honestly, I sort of imagine your place is a bit warmer.
Yeah.
On
where I'm recording, yes. We do have the air conditioner, the portable unit. We don't have central, but we have the portable unit. But that's not in the room I record in because it's loud, and I also record in a room that isn't where we hang. So I'm. This might be a bit of toasty boy summer for me recording wise here until we get. Also, the windows we need to get maintenance in here because the windows don't open in here, which is not ideal. So. Yeah, it's a bit hot, but we're gonna keep powering through it here. I've got 3 beverages. I've got a mason jar full of water. I have a cold brew with brown sugar and oat milk, and then I have a Mountain Dew Baja Blast. So I think I'm ready to go for the summer.
It's so funny because my desk is also a graveyard of 3 beverages. And that's pretty typical for me. I think I've found that a lot of people I know will also do the same thing. We'll have beverages, but
you have the water beverage, the utility beverage, which for me is the coffee right now. Right. And then you have the fun beverage, which is the Baja Blast.
Okay. Well, I'm a little crazier than that because I have right here my empty mug that I was drinking from this morning. I
do have the empty mug too. I'm just talking active beverages.
Oh, active beverages. I currently only have 1 active beverages, but at a certain point today, it was this coffee mug, and then this right here, this glass here was filled with water. And here's the part where it gets a little silly. Is this water bottle was also filled with water, so I had 2 full water beverage. Glasses and this mug of coffee.
Yeah, I feel like you need your to-go water for when you leave the room.
Yes.
And go elsewhere, and it's also kind of backup water, but then you also have your desk water. Like that all makes perfect sense to me.
That's right. And all of this talk of water and the heat, I went swimming yesterday, which I hadn't done in a long time. I hadn't been on a lake swim in quite a long time. My thoughts naturally drifted towards water and the ocean. Niall.
I got one question for you, Kyle.
Yeah.
What are we doing today for the podcast?
Well, let's say this week I took a dive, you might say. Once again into the world of aquatic cryptozoology.
Oh, good. Okay, so we're going back down. We're taking a plunge down under, and we're not talking Australia. This ain't no Outback Steakhouse. We're going underwater.
No, although I did see a really good video where, speaking of Australia,
okay,
where a guy was paragliding in Australia, and he lands, and within seconds of landing, He's got like a what are those cameras that you attach to your like helmet or
GoPro.
whatever? He's got a GoPro or something, and he touches down and is within seconds attacked by a kangaroo, and in an Australian accent,
Wow.
he like bats it away and he says fucking kangaroos, and that's a
I
really
think
good
I've seen
video.
this. Yeah.
That made me laugh. Only in Australia,
Uh-huh.
But no, we're not here to talk about any sort of kangaroo or land dwelling creature. No, we're gonna talk about some marine animals. I actually learned some interesting ancillary stuff about aquatic cryptozoology while researching today's creature as well. So, without further ado, Niall, let's discuss Huvelmann's sea serpent taxonomy and the cryptid marine saurian referred to as the whale eater.
Okay. Sorry. The phrase from Jacques Cousteau to Jacques Vallée just came into my brain, and that feels too tailor-made for this episode to not say. So
No, I like
it has
that.
nothing to do with anything. It just was, I'm thinking we're going into the world of the weird in the sea.
I really like that, actually. That's a good phrase. Somebody
So,
needs to have that on a t-shirt for like a marine cryptozoological society.
Yeah, I'll throw that out in the next convention. You said a bunch of proper nouns before I interrupted you with
Yeah.
the joke that I made. Something about taxonomy and some type of creature. What
Yeah.
can you say that? Can you just say that again for me so I understand what we're talking about?
Huvelmann's sea serpent taxonomy. And then
Huvelmann's. So Huvelmann possessive is a person
Yes,
who has a
Huvelmann's-
taxonomy.
yeah,
Okay.
Huvelmann's is a person. So it's technically Huvelmann's sea serpent taxonomy.
Okay. I understand where you're coming from now. I don't know what those like. I at least understand the purpose of those three words, even if I don't know where we're going.
Yes, and the other thing that I mentioned was a marine saurian, which we'll get into what that is a little bit. But it's a cryptid that's known as the whale eater, one who
Oh.
eats whales.
Big boy. Okay.
Yes, very big boy. So this is we're going to start talking about this guy, Dr. Bernard Huvelmans, because he, I think, has to have come up on an episode before, but I doubt we would have gotten into him too in depth. And this is the way it goes a lot with these. But Dr. Bernard Huvelmans is one of the most important figures in contemporary cryptozoology. He was a Belgian-French zoologist he's basically one of the founding figures of cryptozoology itself. During his career, he would work closely with other cryptozoologists. That would notably be Ivan T. Sanderson, who is another researcher who is usually credited as a co-founder of the field of cryptozoology, alongside Huvelmans. Huvelmans, when I was reading about him, he like had, he was a zoologist, but he also sort of, once he entered the realm of studying the kinds of things that you study in cryptozoology, this is almost like speculative biology thing. He just sort of noted like, I need to have a new term for the field of study that I'm doing, these mysterious unidentified creatures, because it's not the same as doing zoology.
Yeah, you're veering off course of the known into the unknown. I see why you need some different terminology there.
Yeah. So this comes from these guys, both Huvelmans and Sanderson, and they're like the foundations of cryptozoology is something I'd been wanting to cover for a while, but for now we're going to talk about Huvelmans' relationship to the cryptozoology of sea serpents. Because this is sort of how I found this is how I found the whale eater, is like people were talking about the whale eater in terms of Huvelmans' classification.
Okay.
So Huvelmans wrote a handful of highly influential books on cryptids. For our purposes, this would include The Great Sea Serpent in 1965 and In the Wake of Sea Serpents in 1968. And in these books, Huvelmans developed a methodology for categorizing sea serpent-like cryptids. He, I guess, took inspiration from an 1892 text called The Great Sea Serpent by A.C. Odeman, in which Odeman would posit this one central giant animal to explain mysterious creature sightings at sea. So he had like this person, I guess, had this idea in mind that there was just this one monstrous creature that people were seeing.
So it was all like the actual same being, not like there is one type of monster out there that is the same. They're all the same race, but there are multiple of them. There's like, he's saying there was one specific being that everybody was seeing and thinking it was the creatures.
Actually don't know if it was specifically that, like, there is one individual creature or whether it was just like supposed to be a species of creature, but I don't know for sure, but I think maybe it was the one individual creature. Maybe. I mean, that doesn't really make sense though, right? Like, so I'm assuming that this guy probably suggested maybe it was some sort of species of something, but I didn't look into Odeman. It's just mentioned that the Great Sea Serpent inspired Heuvelmans. So Heuvelmans would be the first to offer classifications for these marine sightings of unexplained creatures that sort of divided them up and like analyzed the different sightings that were happening and tried to make a distinction between them.
Oh, cool. I love people trying to like science out cryptozoology. It's one of my favorite parts of this whole thing, so I'm into it.
It's funny because there's a pretty harsh dividing line between the entirely credulous cryptozoology enthusiasts and then like the people who have like a background in, you know, biology or zoology or whatever, and they try to like, I don't know, you could like, I guess, science-ify it, but it's still, you know, speculative and theoretical, and there's a lot of holes in a lot of it. But there are genuinely people out there who have actual like bona fides to suggest that they know something about animals, and so I don't know. I guess that leads to speculation for a lot of people. So Heuvelmann's methodology would eventually be criticized, modified, expanded on in the decades following his books. But at the time, he was like kind of the first guy to really approach cryptids in this way. And I mean, cryptozoology was an emerging thing as well. So he was just, you know, he was a frontiersman of cryptozoology. So Heuvelmann's categories were 9 types. It's an interesting setup. So there were 9 types for these sea cryptids. And those types were long-necked, merhorse, many-humped, many-finned, super otter, super eel, marine saurian, father of all the turtles, and yellow belly.
So the at the end, he just throws in the cowards, the shit-brained ones, you know?
The yellow-bellied bellends. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. That is a weird... Okay. This is one of those things that I feel like... I don't know if there's anything to do with this, but I just... That list of categorizations, the first thing that comes to mind is how did he arrive at those being the ones? Because when you started off with long-necked, I was like, okay, so we're going to base this off of body parts. It's going to be specific identifying features that can then group, you can group things under.
Yeah.
But then the second one was like merhorses, which is like a specific creature. I don't understand how he got to these 9 categorizations other than maybe he started grouping them in some way until there were none left. He took all of the possible ones and tried to group them in that way. That
is basically what he did.
Okay.
And so honestly, like, I mean, if you think about it, it's 1965. One thing I can also tell you about Heuvelmann's is that he basically put together a list of all known cryptid sightings that he could conceive of and find information about as of the 1960s. So he, you know, this is, again, it's early on in the you know, field of cryptozoology. So there was, I don't know, I just feel like there's also this aspect of like there's a lot of wiggle room here where like you have to interpret historical things too. So like there's mythological things that get, so like for instance the merhorse, you can sort of think of like the ancient Greek mythological creature, the hippocampus, which is like it's like this maned sea serpent like creature with these usually has large eyes, and in some depictions it's literally like upper body of a horse, lower body of a fish. I don't think it's that literal when you look into depictions of like if you go on the cryptid wiki and look for Hüvelmans, you will find the list, and aside each thing in the list, there will be a drawn depiction of what he is referring to. So I'm assuming he got these from like, I haven't read the book, but I'm assuming he got these from like historical accounts or something like that. And like some of it probably did come from recent like sightings that, newspapers he dredged up somewhere, but I'm assuming that there's also some history that's been folded into this thing. So he would like establish a type for these things, and then Hüvelmans would offer a binomial scientific name, which was basically inspired by the parataxonomic classification of trace fossils, which I find it interesting that it's specifically trace fossils, because these are fossils that would serve as evidence of biological activity, but not actual fossilized remains of the creature itself. So it suggests something was there, but we don't have the actual thing.
So the nomenclature almost leans in towards this isn't actual evidence of these creatures.
Almost. I guess I don't know what his like reasoning is behind that, because again, I couldn't read. I don't have access to the book, but it does sort of like lend to the fact that he seems to be approaching this as like theoretical biology, as opposed to, I definitely know for a fact that this is a living plesiosaur,
Gotcha. Okay.
So I have here a little bit of a description on the different categories that he has. We already went over the merhorse, but then there was long-necked, which were basically pinnipeds, which are fin-footed creatures, and they have long necks. So you can think like plesiosaur-esque Nessie type creatures.
Yeah. Okay.
There was the many-finned, which is, pretty self-explanatory, which is it's like this many-limbed or finned creature. It often has a segmented body, and they reference a great sea centipede from, again, mythology for this.
Okay.
There is many-humped, which, again, pretty self-explanatory. Serpent-like with humpback. I'm trying not to be like a 6-year-old by saying many-humped. But serpent-like with humpback, often associated with a basilosaur, which is a prehistoric predatory kind of whale.
Okay.
Then we have a super otter, which is like, it's a very large and flexible aquatic mammal, and it would be similar to an otter or a seal, and would have like a tapering tail, 4 distinct limbs. So picture an otter blown up to super proportions.
Yeah. Okay. I'm with that one.
Then this is another very obvious one, but I find the name funny because, like, I don't know, it just sticks out among the others. The father of all the turtles, which would be,
yeah. I mean, we have one of those in Indiana.
It's
There's
true.
That really big turtle.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a carapaced sea serpent, or in other words, a giant sea turtle. A sea serpent, by the way, can mean a lot of things, especially in history, it turns out.
It's not linked to just like snake-like creatures in the ocean.
No,
it's wider.
It's a bit wider the further back you go in history, but we definitely, I mean, you hear serpent and you think snake-like, right?
Yeah.
This one's really fucking weird, and I want to look into the cryptid sighting that it's supposedly referencing, but the yellow belly is basically this absurdly enormous yellow tadpole creature. I'm sort of guessing there are like salamanders that can grow to enormous size. And I'm sort of guessing this is what it is, but I have no real way of telling you. But the like depiction of it, it's literally like a giant yellow tadpole, the way it was drawn. So that's a weird one. And then, of course, last but not least, the marine saurian, basically like an enormous alligator or crocodile, but notably it is typically encountered out in the open ocean, far away from the habitats of, say, a saltwater crocodile. So this is open ocean monstrous alligator or crocodile,
Okay.
whatever.
I think Jason Statham's doing that movie.
Yes, I felt kind of bad because this was such a Garrett coded episode. It was like,
Yeah, it really is.
It's so like Garrett should have been here for this one, but we don't have.
There's
him
like
quite set up.
historical scientists. There's sea serpents.
Yeah.
There's fucking like
Crocodiles.
folklore. There's
Yeah.
yeah.
Garrett would have loved this.
Well, shouts out Garrett. You're in the thoughts. We'll see if you hear this.
So, Heuvelmans would examine 587 sightings of mysterious aquatic creatures to develop this sort of taxonomy. And Heuvelmans had some interesting conclusions about this. So he said that 121 of these were, quote, vague and therefore doubtful. 56 were decidedly false reports based on 49 very deliberate hoaxes. 52 were certain or probable cases of mistaken identity, and the 9 were, quote, incomprehensible, unclassifiable, or very suspect. And 41 were unclassifiable periscopes, which would suggest long necks or super eels. Like periscopes, I think.
Oh, like a long projected neck
Yes.
as opposed to an actual like submarine periscope.
Yes,
okay.
yes. And then the remaining 308 that were on his, sort of database were then assigned by a computer to the 9 types that he had laid out, which it rendered them with varying degrees of certainty. Like this entire method here and all the things that got sort of like sorted into these categories, it would be heavily like scrutinized. Heuvelman himself, so over the decades, certain categories would then be like subsumed into others. So, for instance, the yellow belly would get incorporated into the super eel category. Cryptozoologist Dale Drinnen, who was a key source on my living pterosaur episode, if you'll remember that one.
Yep.
Drinnen suggests that the long neck and the merhorse could both be classified as a sort of plesiosaurian sea serpent.
I can see that.
He also goes as far as to suggest that we could drop super otter, many humped, and many finned entirely and just group things a bit more broadly, I guess. There's also this whole question of the legitimacy of applying binomial names to what are effectively unknown creatures, because there's, I guess, a convention for that. There's like an actual standard, and Heuvelmans is just saying like, well, there's these theoretical creatures out there based on these sightings. What if we classified all of the creatures that fall into that realm of biology and zoology?
So basically, he's just like, what if we do this my way instead?
I guess so. Yeah.
And like, it's not that's a bad thing. I don't. This is not passing any sort of judgment. It's just funny that they were like, yeah, there's like a way to do this, and he's like, well, these are different, so no.
Yeah, and I mean, I think just as far as the standards are concerned, it's for like actual discoveries of real creatures, like that you can confirm,
Yeah.
So
So he may actually have a point that this is different enough that it merits its own study. It's funny. I like the places where like someone just is like, no, this is just I'm branching off of the known. I'm branching off of the like the normal and doing, because I think this is a special enough thing that it deserves its own study. It's fun.
Yeah, Heuvelmans wants to do his own thing, and who can fault him for that? What I kind of like about this too is Heuvelmans himself seemed to agree with some of the criticisms about his categories. He would also kind of abandon the yellow belly and father of all the turtles categories. But then he would also, I guess, add a category for giant invertebrates. But since Heuvelmans' system, a number of cryptozoologists have, like I said, iterated on the idea, attempting to sort of scientify the cryptozoology field. Now, the reason I ended up on this brief detour into sea serpent classification is because of the kinds of people that were discussing our cryptid subject for today, the whale eater, which would fall under the classification, the Heuvelmans type, known as the marine saurian, the giant crocodile or alligator type cryptid that lives out in the open ocean. So, like many sea serpent cryptids, the whale eater tends to be theorized by cryptozoologists to be a sort of surviving Jurassic or Cretaceous era crocodilian. We don't have to get in depth on, like, I think if I say a giant prehistoric crocodile in the open ocean, you all have a pretty good image in your head. But here's some.
Is there not any? There's no like, and it's red, or like, there's no weird fucking delineating factor. It's just if you think giant monstrous crocodile, you'll be on point.
I mean, there's the question of like figuring out what visually like dinosaurs and these prehistoric animals like looked like, which I don't even know how to answer that question. I'm not informed enough, but you know. These are people,
I've heard feathers are in.
Feathers are very in right now, although I kind of doubt that an open ocean monster crocodile has feathers. I don't know.
Good old wet feathers.
Yeah, the wet feather style of crocodile. But I can give you a couple terms that if you want to like Google them to get really into them and see what I'm talking about. These are the names that are being tossed around by cryptozoologists. So when they're talking about this, they're theorizing about prehistoric Thalattosuchia, which were actually existing but commonly assumed to be extinct crocodilomorphs. But then, like, people also bring into the marine saurian category other extinct creatures from various clades and orders. That would be stuff such as Thalassophonia and Pythonomorphia. So these are all, you know, they all share somewhat similar features. But if you want to look that stuff up, those are the like terms that, you know, cryptozoologists were throwing around.
I somehow nailed the spelling of Thalattosuchia on the first try.
Nice.
And I can now see these pictures. It's interesting.
It's a little it's unexpected for one of us to be able to do something like that, given how often we mispronounce and misspell things. But
yeah, it was surprising, and I thought it was worth mentioning.
No, it's novel,
cool
and I'm happy for you, frankly.
This thing's got a real bottlenose snout.
Yeah, that's going to be like the differences. Like some of them, which I think the bottlenose snout is like a little bit more crocodilian, and then there's others that are more alligator-like with the wider, you know, snouts and stuff. So
yeah.
It just depends on, you know, and I can say that if we'll get to the pictures in a minute, but I think that the whale eater that we mainly focus on in this episode is theorized to be one of the more narrow snouted creatures. So the point is, I guess, that marine saurian covers a wide range of creatures for cryptozoologists, but my main source on the story of the whale eater claims to have, he believes he's narrowed it down a bit. So this is Max Hawthorne, who is an author and cryptid enthusiast. An important thing to note about Hawthorne, he mostly writes sci-fi thriller novels about like prehistoric ocean monsters. So he's got a vested interest. Yes, this is his not only his wheelhouse, but like his primary way of making money, believe it or not.
It's both his job and his hobby, which you know,
he's not working a day in his life because he loves what he does, you know, as the old saying goes.
Do you think when he goes to write one of his nonfiction book, he's like, man, I wish I could just be writing about like these monsters instead of writing about these monsters. I want to write about them eating people. You know,
I mean, look. Here's the thing, Niall. That's like when you think about, and I don't do this, I don't think like this, but like if you're Marvel brained and comic book pilled, you're thinking about all the diverging timelines and stuff and possible realities. So in Earth 314, you know, commonly referred to as Pi Earth, by the way, Garrett is an author who is doing that exact fucking thing where he's like, he's researching like prehistoric, like aquatic, you know,
if like the chipmunk hadn't gotten into his house when he was 4, we would be describing his life right now. But because it splintered the timeline and now he's, you know,
Yes, there is a version of Garrett where he is writing sci-fi horror thriller novels about giant crocodiles and mega sharks eating
Yeah,
people.
he has a consulting credit on the Meg. That's like Garrett's ideal life.
Yes,
You know,
yes, exactly. So
if Garrett could get a shark consultant tag on his IMDb, I think that would make his life.
yes, I mean, yeah, I mean, this is there is. It's funny because I was actually like when I was researching this, I came across like basically cryptid mega sharks, and I was like, there is absolutely no chance I'm doing this episode without Garrett. I'm
Yeah,
not
it would actually
doing
be
it.
cruel.
It would be
without
actually
him.
cruel. So we'll get him for that in the future someday. But this would have been a good one too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this guy Max Hawthorne, he also appeared on Coast to Coast AM. He's had some appearances there. I sort of noted that in his writing about the whale eater, he lends a bit of, I don't know. I'm assuming he writes somewhat similarly to his like sci-fi writing about prehistoric sharks eating people or whatever. I get the vibe that he's trying to like drum up suspense in his blog posts about cryptids.
Yeah.
So I also got some more information from Dale Drinnan's Frontiers of Zoology blogspot. So between Drinnan and Hawthorne, I was able to find a couple early accounts of the whale eater that seemed to fall into the Heuvelmann's classification of marine saurians, or at least they seem to think it does. So first off, in one article I read, this is like a little tiny side thing. One article I read, it was suggested without any source or reference to back it up, so I don't know how this association got made. But it was suggesting that the Inuit people in Alaska have historically encountered the whale eater, or what we know as the whale eater, and have brought that creature into their mythology. So this is an Inuit legend known as Tizheruk, which is a large sea serpent creature that lives in the waters surrounding Alaska. It is described as having a head over 6.5 feet long, sporting a long tail with a flipper, and in total, the creature is believed to be 12 to 15 feet long. The Tizheruk were said to snatch unassuming folks off of docks and piers, often without its presence being noticed. And while this description could fit into a couple different categories, at least one whale eater truther out there has pulled it into the canon for whatever reason. So I just saw that on a thing. I was like, all right, I'll include it, but I don't know.
I do love the moments of like the one guy moments
Yes,
that happen
yes.
on this podcast, where like you read one comment on one of these fucking blogs and it'll just derail your entire episode sometimes. I know that's not what you're saying here, but like it has happened to me before where like I get sent down an entirely different rabbit hole because of one person on a fucking message board from 10 years ago. Like it's wild.
Yeah, well, and people really love this cryptid too. So like, I feel like there's a lot of like fan theorizing essentially.
Yeah.
It's like, what do we think this is? And then somebody out there made that connection between that legend and the whale eater, I guess.
This might be too big of a question just to talk about right now. But
Well, that's at the end of the episode, so
fair. What do you think makes certain cryptids really like pop off? Because like the whale eater is just like a big shark, or like it's just like a big crocodile. Like what? I the mysteriousness of like Mothman and the pervasiveness of Bigfoot makes sense.
yeah. I mean, I guess
I
I don't. That's a good question because I mean, a lot of different. I don't know. There's a lot of different reasons why I think these things pop off, and I think at least for something like this, it's similar to me to the. Well, first of all, if you're running from the standpoint of living dinosaur, I mean, just think about how much dinosaurs tend to excite all kinds of people, or like you grow up. Like as a kid, it's a classic kid thing to be really into dinosaurs.
Yeah, dinosaurs are one of the like 10 things kids are allowed to get really into.
Yes, exactly. So I just think that like there is an exciting thing to like these depictions of these creatures and stories of them and like all the stuff that's built up around them. I mean, why is Garrett super into giant sharks and giant, alligators that, are like, why are people into that? It's hard to say, but it's like spectacle is there. There's like a science angle. Like, there's just a lot of different ways that it can, excite people, I guess, is what I'm saying. So it covers a pretty wide swath of human beings.
Fair.
And I gotta admit, like, when I'm researching something like this, I am kind of just like, damn, that is fucking, like, just like envisioning in my head something that is big enough to be a predator to a whale in the ocean is like fucking wild to just think about.
Oh yeah.
So
like I have like a big thing with the Ningen.
oh yeah,
In that respect, where it's like, oh, this thing is so large that the idea of it functioning in reality is like is like hard to grasp.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. When size is given really well, like when size has like impact in things, it's one of my favorite things in like movies and various shit. I well depicted size is cool as fuck. It's cool as fuck.
So you might say you're a little bit of a size queen.
Yeah, a little bit. I straight up here. Okay, actually, here's something for you.
Oh God.
One of the best places I've seen it done recently. I didn't realize that this was a thing. But the like short horror film thing that Anno did, and it was released with one of the rebuilds, and it's like the God destroys.
Oh yeah.
That is one of the best executions of size in things.
Hell yeah.
In like media. It's, you can find it on YouTube. I forget what it's actually called, but if you can should be able to find it.
I think it is like God Destroys Tokyo. I know what you're talking about. I believe that premiered before one of the Evangelion rebuilds in theaters in Japan. So, and yeah, I watched that and thought it was great. It's on one of my Blu-rays of the... Anyways, yeah, I do love that as well. The Ningen, for those who don't know, is like this gigantic white thing in the ocean. And like...
Vaguely humanoid, but in like a stick figure way. Like, it's weird.
And like, the thing is, too, you can... it's the ocean. We know that so much of that shit is unexplored, and as long as people are going down there into exploding submarines, it's going to remain unexplored.
Fair.
So, like...
Sorry, imploding submarine.
Yeah, I guess imploding, yeah. So, like... there's so much that we don't know about the ocean that it is akin to outer space, but it is here with us. It like we are alongside it, and that's very enticing as well too. So
fair.
So one of the earliest accounts that I found that is attributed to the whale eater is the June 1877 sighting from the HMY Osborne. So the Lords Commissioners of the Admiralty received official reports from the Royal Yacht Osborne, forwarded by Commander Pearson, regarding the sighting of an unidentified marine creature seen on the second day of that month off of Cape Vito, Sicily. So here is Commander Pearson's report on this thing. Quote, I myself saw the fish through a telescope, but at too great a distance, about 400 yards, to be able to give a detailed description. But I distinctly saw the seal-shaped head of immense size, large flappers, and part of a huge body. The reports go on. Lieutenant Douglas Forsyth delivered a report. I think you're right. Delivered a report on June 4th that said, quote, at 5 p.m. on the 2nd, while passing Cape St. Vito, north coast of Sicily, I observed a large black-looking object on the starboard quarter, distant about 2 cables, which a cable is about 240 yards. And on examining it with a telescope, I found it to be a huge monster, having a head about 15 to 20 feet in length. The breadth I could not observe. The head was round and full at the crown. The animal was slowly swimming in a southeasterly direction, propelling itself by means of 2 large flappers or fins, somewhat in the manner of a seal. I also saw a portion of the body of the animal, and that part was certainly not under 45 or 50 feet in length. Then we have another officer, Lieutenant Haynes, reporting, quote, on the evening of June 2nd, the sea being perfectly smooth, my attention was first called by seeing a ridge of fins above the surface of the water. extending about 30 feet and varying from 5 to 6 feet in height. On inspecting it by means of a telescope at about 1.5 cables distance, I distinctly saw a head, 2 flappers, and about 30 feet of an animal's shoulder. The head, as nearly as I could judge, was about 6 feet thick, the neck narrower, about 4 to 5 feet, the shoulder about 15 feet across, and the flappers each about 15 feet in length. The movements of the flappers were those of a turtle, and the animal resembled a huge seal, the resemblance being strongest about the back of the head. I could not see the length of the head, but from its crown or top to just below the shoulder, where it became immersed, I should reckon about 50 feet. The tail end I did not see, it being underwater unless the ridge of fins to which my attention was first attracted and which had disappeared by the time I got a telescope, was really the continuation of the shoulder to the end of the body. The animal's head was not always above water, but was thrown upwards, remaining above for a few seconds at a time and then disappearing. There was an entire absence of blowing or spouting.
Wow.
And then finally, HMY Osborne's engineer, simply named here Mr. Moore, wrote this. Quote, when looking over the starboard quarter of the ship, my attention was called by observing an uneven ridge of what appeared to me to be the fins of a fish above the surface of the water about a cable's length distance from the ship. They varied in height, as near as I can judge, from 7 to 8 feet above the water and extended about 40 feet along the surface. Not having a telescope with me, I regret I am unable to give a further description. So, this thing has giant fucking 6 to 8 foot fins poking up out of the water. This thing's huge.
Has 30 feet of shoulder or whatever the fuck you said. Like, this thing is yoked to shit and is gonna really... This thing is gonna take down a Royal Cruise liner. Like, goddamn.
Yeah. I wonder about this sighting. Like... A lot of this, like I said, gets wrapped up into the whale eater. I was thinking about this and I was like, well, there's like whales and stuff and dolphins and things that have fins and they could like maybe be swimming together like as a group. Mm-hmm. So if they're like seeing, like maybe they're seeing the individual fins of these whales, but they're all swimming together. And the only thing that makes it a little weird is the one Lieutenant Haynes says that there was no blowing or spouting. I guess that didn't necessarily have to happen with the whales there, if that's what it was. But I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, it's either some absolutely fucking enormous creature or a bunch of little ones. Or I guess more normal-sized ones, I should say.
Yeah. It might be a king rat situation.
Yes, yeah.
In some way, shape, or form. Or it's just a big boy.
I mean, can you imagine how... I mean, that would honestly be just as fucking insane as encountering a 100-foot-long monstrous creature in the ocean. It's just an actual bundle of just killer whales all fucking together.
Yeah.
That would be, honestly, probably as remarkable as a mythological alligator. Or prehistoric alligator, I should say. So looking at this, another contributor to Drinnan's blog, somebody named Jay Cooney, was the one to create the Marine Saurian Association with this particular sighting. He notes that one of the reports mentioned that... I didn't see what report this was, but there were a bunch of, like, dead images, like broken images, which I know that there's supposed to be, like, illustrations of this thing, so it might be under one of these images. But he says that one of the reports mentions the face of an alligator, and then he references the pointed fins off of the back, both of which, you know, accounting for the estimated proportions of the creature, could suggest a very large marine saurian. Like, think fucking Leviathan, you know?
Yeah. Okay.
So that's his suggestion. It's also mentioned that this was kind of interesting. It's mentioned that around the corner from the Mediterranean Sea where this would have been is, you know, that's the North Atlantic, where you can find tales of the Irish whale eater, also known as Goramolach. So from a newspaper clipping from the New York Kingston Daily Freeman, we have this. June 17th, 1922. Ireland has found its own sea serpent. It has an Irish name, and fishermen insist that sight of it is bad luck. This being the time for the annual crop of sea serpents, the public here is being regaled with a new one of Irish nationality.
We got our own now. You don't need to go outside of Ireland for your cryptids.
Delightful. Its Irish name is Goramulach. It cannot only swim and lash its tail in orthodox sea serpent manner, but reports from the west coast of Ireland, where it is alleged to have been seen frequently, credit it with the power of flight.
What?
Yes.
Okay.
According to inhabitants of the wilder parts of the coast of Connemara, Mayo, and Donegal, the Goramulach frequently turns up for exhibition stunts, principally at night. It is described as being shaped like a porpoise, 100 feet long, and rushing through the water with the speed of an express train. Occasionally, it would leap out of and forward over the water a distance to its own length. When it fell back into the sea again, the splash was said to sound like the crack of a 3-inch gun. The fact that these creatures are not seen more often is because it is explained they appear principally at night. It is then that they go a-hunting after the gannet, a sort of seagull. When they see one flying near the surface of the ocean, they leap out of the water 40 or 50 feet and gliding by the aid of their large wing-like fins, guided by their vertically set tail, bringing down the bird. Fishermen, curiously enough, consider the appearance of the Goramulach to be a sign of bad luck, though it has not yet been reported to be cannibalistic. I don't quite know what that means, by the way, but that's in the article.
Yeah, like, because, okay, a couple things.
Yeah.
First, the cannibalistic thing is weird just because, like, I can see this thing being bad for fishermen in that when it splashes down, all fish probably, like, swim the fuck away, you know? Because you're just dropping effectively a boat from 50 feet in the air down into the water. I feel like that would cause a lot of turmoil. But the thing that I'm really struggling with is the fact that this thing hunts seagulls, which proportionally to it would be like me hunting chiclets or a single nerd.
Yeah.
So does it eat anything bigger, or is it just like, does it eat just like half the population of seagulls on Earth every day?
I don't know that for sure. But let me finish what this article. There's this little tiny tidbit here at the end of this article, and then I'll address what you just said.
Okay.
So it says here at the end, but there is another brand of sea serpent which they fear more as a sign of ill omen. This one is the Baudrillard. It is said to be a large whale-like animal, so large and powerful that it chases whales for sport. According to local superstition, the sight of a Baudrillard means certain ill luck for the men and the craft who spot it. So the Goramulach is, according to what people are saying online, and I can see what they're saying, it's almost definitely a misidentified humpback whale.
Oh, okay.
So, like, it doesn't fly, obviously, but it can breach pretty spectacularly over the water, and it's huge. Now, when people are seeing these things and saying, "Oh, they're 100 feet long," it, like, these whales can grow up to, like, I don't know, like 65 feet. They are really big, but
Yeah.
you know, when you're looking at it and you see something that huge, you make an estimate. You kind of exaggerate maybe too. So that's probably where that comes from. So yeah, it's, you know, and I guess like a humpback whale, I don't know if like humpback whales eat seagulls. That's new to me if that's a thing. But, you know, as I've kind of understood a lot of whales, I believe they're like filter feeders, right? Like
Some of them are, yeah.
some of them. I don't know much about the humpback specifically, but so yeah, I don't know. Maybe every once in a while a humpback whale gets a hankering to see what the sky chicken tastes like. They've had enough of the chicken of the sea, and they want to get a taste. So,
God forbid they ever taste chicken of the land, you know? Like, if they start getting that shit, they're going to come on land all the time, and it's going to be real bad.
It's a slow evolution towards humans the size of skyscrapers.
Because I've seen what subsisting on, like, only chicken breasts does to wrestlers. Oh. I don't want to see that happen to fucking, like, anything in the sea. They don't need to get jacked.
Definitely not. Can you picture a whale with abs and how scary that idea is? That's fucking scary.
What if like a crocodile had the, like, what is it, the triceps that are the thing that make it look like you have shoulders on your shoulders?
Oh yeah,
like you just see one of those with like a fucking thick neck and triceps.
I've seen some interesting art online that depicts something not unlike that.
Yeah.
So,
Fair.
So yeah, probably a misidentified humpback whale, but the Baudrillard is a bit more ominous, given that it's said to scare whales so thoroughly that they are paid paid. They're said to practically leap in fear out of the water to escape it. Or maybe they're paid to do that and they're just trying to make like a couple of like, I don't know, sharks look extra cool. Sharks like, here, I'll give you 20 bucks. Yeah, I'll give you 20 bucks to like run as far away and fast as you can from me, so that I look really scary. But it turns out the shark's kind of a sweetheart, actually. Not actually that scary, but he's got to keep up appearances for his shark mom and dad. And this is the new film that I'm pitching at Pixar called Shark Tale 2, not the same movie. Not the same franchise.
Yeah, I was gonna
not
say,
the same franchise.
Up until that last bit, I thought we were gonna have some copyright issues, but you solved it. You're good to go.
Thank you. As long as you say in the title, actually, it's not that movie that you're thinking of, then you can just take whatever name from whatever thing that you want, I think.
Yeah, this episode's entitled The Godfather, but not that one.
So unfortunately, I don't actually have any more info on the Irish kind of whale eater, but I do have a few more stories about whale eaters. So this next story is also pulled from Hawthorne's blog, which is supposedly an eyewitness account that suggests another early 20th century marine saurian encounter. So here's what it says. During World War I, the German submarine U-28, under the command of Captain Georg von Forstner, torpedoed the British steamer Iberian in the North Atlantic. His report read, on July 30th, 1915, our U-28 torpedoed the British steamer Iberian carrying a rich cargo in the North Atlantic. The steamer sank quickly, the bow sticking almost vertically into the air. When it had gone for about 25 seconds, there was a violent explosion. A little later, pieces of wreckage, and among them a gigantic sea animal, writhing and struggling wildly, was shot out of the water to a height of 60 to 100 feet. At that moment, I had with me in the conning tower my officers of the watch, the chief engineer, the navigator, and the helmsman. Simultaneously, we all drew one another's attention to this wonder of the seas. We were unable to identify it. We did not have time to take a photograph, for the animal sank out of sight after 10 or 15 seconds. It was about 60 feet long, was like a crocodile in shape, and had 4 limbs with powerful webbed feet.
Okay.
Now, I kind of have to just take Hawthorne at his word that this is like an eyewitness account that he got somewhere. Maybe it's in one of his books. I don't know, but it's on his blog. I don't know where it came from, just from him. And Hawthorne claims to be skeptical, but open to certain cryptozoological theories, namely the surviving dinosaur phenomenon, which we covered in the Living Pterosaur episode and have brought up in a number of other episodes. And he claims that accounts like the previous one have given him reason to believe, I guess, in this theory. And so he suggests the possibility that prehistoric mosasaurs and plesiosaurs may still be living in the ocean, not yet extinct despite scientific consensus. So Hawthorne's big expose on the whale eater comes in the form of a 2014 blog post analyzing a washed-up dead whale in England. So here's what he says. So stick with me for a while here.
Fantastic.
We have a whole fucking article here. So on August 13th, 2012, a 65-foot finback whale ended up stranded on the beach off of the St. Austell coast of England. This was documented by both still pictures and film footage. According to the reports, the whale swam into the shallows and remained there until the receding tide left it stranded. Despite rescue efforts, the whale, which was reported as malnourished, extremely distressed, and sporting injuries to its face and eye, died shortly thereafter. What struck me as odd, and what nobody seems to have paid attention to, are the wounds on the whale's face. As you can see from the preceding photograph, and there's a photograph, and I can send it to you if you would like, Niall, there are a series of deep punctures running along the right side of its lower jaw that are quite visible in many of the pictures. The punctures are evenly spaced and run in a straight line, then curve around to form an unmistakable elongated U-shaped pattern.
Okay, yeah, I got you.
So he goes on and says, when I saw this wound pattern, I was stunned. And before I put my neck in the noose and make myself a target for media ridicule, let me state that I'm not readily given to flights of fantasy. I prefer to deal with reality. I like empirical evidence, real physical stuff that I can touch, test, and relate to. If you show me a really good Sasquatch footprint, for example, I'll be interested. If you show me where one chomped down on your shoulder, however, I'll be intrigued. It's a lot harder to fake a bite mark than it is a footprint. And when I looked at the wound pattern on the finback whale's face, I found myself faced with a frightening possibility. It might just be a bite mark. So
yeah, that is better evidence than a lot of places have. Now, I am curious. This seems like one of those things that there's actually a very basic explanation for, but that does sound like a crocodile bite pattern.
Yeah,
I see where he's coming from.
Yeah, and if you look at the photo, I kind of understand what he's talking about. Like, if you want, I can send it to you.
Sure.
But here, let me.
It does have chat.
Yeah.
So I guess we can use it. I do see that. Yeah, that looks. I can see how you look at that and see crocodile.
Yeah, and like it's kind of cropped in the version of the image that I sent to you, but there's another angle and another wider shot of this thing, and it does sort of seem those marks you see at the very front of it there do seem to kind of go up its snout. Or I guess rather its lower jaw. Which, by the way, I was just total side thing. Seeing these photos of the whale, I was just fucking struck by how crazy whales are. Like,
yeah,
really wild creatures, really, really cool. I've never seen one, but I would love to see one in the wild. That'd be super cool.
I went on like a catamaran thing I think in Key West, and we saw like whale pods breaching and stuff. Like,
so awesome.
Cool.
Yeah,
they're fucking big.
I know, that's why I want to see them. My dad, I think, saw a whole fucking bunch of them in Alaska, like come right up to the boat that he was on. I would kill to see a whale, but I probably don't have to, fortunately. So
yeah, I think that'd actually be discouraged, and you should just go out on a whale watching cruise.
Yes. So he goes on in his article here. Hawthorne goes on to say, based on the photographic evidence, it appears that something very large with long crocodile-shaped jaws lined with big, sharp teeth may have attacked the finback. I know that sounds insane, but then crazy things happen all the time. Is it possible, or is there some other explanation? It's not a shark bite, nor that of a sperm whale, not that they feed on other whales anyway. Rocks or rebar from ruptured pilings don't typically make organized punctures like that. And he makes a note here that the footage of the dying whale confirms that it was lying on sand with no rocky jetty visible nearby. Moreover, fresh wounds would bleed. So he's suggesting they're not fresh. And I just can't picture something coming down to the beach with an oversized pickaxe. I can't picture someone coming down to the beach with an oversized pickaxe while crowds are gathered and cameras rolling and whacking away at the poor beached whale in such a precise manner without getting spotted. Not to mention, even stranded in the shallows, I don't think the whale would have been very receptive. Without examining the whale's corpse and the other side of its jaw in particular, it's impossible to say with any degree of certainty. However, barring some unforeseen explanation coming to light, I'm inclined to remain open to the possibility. Think about it. A large cetacean, wounded, distressed, and malnourished, basically committed suicide by beaching itself. That's what happened. The whale swam into the shallows and remained there even as the tide went out, allowing itself to become stranded, a certain death. Why would a whale do that? As a novelist who specializes in marine terror, the motivator that automatically comes to mind is fear.
That's just like such like I forgot that this guy also writes novels. Like we were doing the side of him that is research into cryptids, and I lost sight for a moment due to the technical issues we had and everything. This guy also writes books about like horror books about these creatures, and that delighted me.
Yeah,
such a wonderful
it's
thing.
A great
oh my god
series, great sentence.
This is one of the only people that can use like both sides of their shit to justify the other one. Like he's quote unquote better at his novels because he researches these things, and he's more into the research because he writes novels about like it. He's got life figured out.
Got
okay,
a little bit
that's
of
what I'm saying.
Loop, a positive feedback loop here.
This guy's got his life working. That's all I got.
Yes. He goes on to say, I would imagine death on a beach from slow suffocation would be infinitely preferable to being torn apart and devoured by a monstrous predator. It would be like choosing between sitting in a closed garage with the car engine running and being eaten alive by a hungry crocodile. Which would you prefer? So,
I mean,
yeah,
when
I
you
guess.
put it that way.
I guess. Putting aside my admittedly lingering doubts and focusing on the possibility that I'm correct in my interpretation, my next question would be, how would such an attack have taken place? The writer in me again springs to the fore. Perforce, there are myriad possibilities, but based on the physical evidence, it was an attack. I imagine something along the lines of the finback whale being initially attacked out at sea by what was most likely an enormous mosasaur or plesiosaur. He has a note here that says, the fossil record supports the potential for such a predator in the exact same region. The Weymouth Bay plesiosaur, also known as Plesiosaurus cavani, whose skull is on display in the Dorset County Museum in Dorchester, had a tooth-lined skull measuring nearly 8 feet in length, with the animal itself calculated at nearly 40. If you study the images of the whale online, in particular the one where the rescue workers are surrounding the finback's head, you can see the portion of the whale's lower jaw where it was enveloped measures about. I see. Where it was enveloped measures about 6 feet. So where the jaw came down is about 6 feet.
Gotcha.
Or the theoretical jaw. Given that the punctures are shallower and more ragged closer to the tip of the whale's jaw, and also taking into account the whale's bullet-shaped head, which would have resulted in more scrapes and less punctures if that portion of its face was inside a predator's wide-open mouth, the attacker must have had a substantial gape. In fact, using a photo
and that's also really useful in my other
his other
line of business, you know?
In fact, using a side photo of the Weymouth Bay plesiosaur's skull as a point of reference, I estimate the jaws of the creature that attacked the finback measured somewhere between 10 and 12 feet in length. With a 5-to-1 ratio of skull to body, that equates to a plesiosaur up to 60 feet in length, the same size as the animal U-boat Captain Georg von Forstner spotted in 1915. The news reports also state that the whale was very malnourished, extremely distressed, and had numerous injuries, including scrapes and scratches and wounds around its eye, as can be seen in the images. If you watch the video of it, you will see one of the rescue workers stating that the divers reported the animal had also suffered abdominal wounds. He has a note here. Photos or footage of these abdominal wounds were never shown. And why did an elite dive team show up there in the first place? Is that the norm for standings? Not that I know of. So there's a little conspiracy angle here.
Yeah.
Knowing how modern ambush predators like white sharks make a living, I would venture that the whale was initially attacked from below. That makes sense as it avoids a defensive fluke strike. Sure. Also attacking the whale's face, its toughest, boniest point, would have been far less productive. So he asks here, was the whale already malnourished when it was attacked? He says it's quite possible. Predators often zero in on weak and injured animals, and a healthy adult finback would be a strong and swift opponent, one tough to drag down, especially for a lone assailant. On the other hand, if the initial attack was unsuccessful, the whale's attacker may have simply kept after it, like a Komodo dragon that delivers a deadly bite and then waits for its prey to expire. The aggressor may have pursued the wounded whale and repeatedly harried it, with the goal of preventing it from feeding or resting until it was so drained and exhausted it was unable to fight back, an easy kill. He finishes up here and says, regardless, I would hazard that the whale, knowing it was doomed, took to the shallows to die. Its pursuer, most likely a crafty hunter that instinctively shies away from human beings and their huge, noisy ships, would have taken steps to prevent this. It is at this point that I imagine it attacked the finback head-on, possibly trying to seize it by the throat. The whale may have sacrificed its face to save its throat, and its attacker, now locked onto it, tried to wrestle it down, hoping to kill it outright. The damage to the whale's face lends credence to this, as the loss of tissue around its eye may have happened as the two titans struggled back and forth, dragging their way along the rough seafloor as the whale fought for its life. In the end, the finback, fighting with the strength of desperation, broke free from its reptilian adversary and fled for the shallows. With its pursuer waiting hungrily in the distance, the exhausted and terrified cetacean resolved to remain there to die rather than facing what waited for it in the deep water. So this is his. I have for you, Niall, another image.
Okay.
That I'm gonna send. He has basically a drawing of what he proposes this attack looked like. And basically, it's this giant alligator jaw kind of came in at a certain angle up to the whale's face and he's sort of suggesting, maybe it did the alligator style, I don't know, attack to get this thing to try and kill this thing.
Okay.
And so, but here's the thing. He does note at the end, like, hey, all of that information, and we are missing info. We don't know what the other side of this thing looks like, so we can't confirm that there's like some sort of, if there is a pattern on the other side of this whale's face that would be the same, then it would probably be even more suggestive of a giant jaw clamping down. He lays out all that information and analysis, and he's just sort of suggesting that maybe there's more lurking in the ocean than we realize. So why not some sort of saurian crocodilian monster?
These like sketches of how the bite may have happened really feels like a meme image where like it's like about, it's like a couple where one of them is like bitey or something. Like it has this really weird like 1-2 image meme energy to it that I can't fully describe. I opened it and I just started laughing.
The whale itself looks pretty nonplussed about the whole thing.
Yeah.
Which is, but the alligator seems kind of eager to clamp down on that sucker, and
sorry, I think that means we now have to include an image, a link to this with the podcast. I referenced it too much.
I can put some images in the description, some links to these images. So yeah, he seems to be pretty well convinced that there's a dinosaur in the ocean that can kill whales.
All right.
But the corpse was also not preserved or really studied. So we can't get any definite answers about whether or not it was killed by a monstrous prehistoric crocodile, but we can speculate about it. But these are all the main sightings that get referred to as the whale eater. There are many, many sea serpent sightings throughout history. Few are quite as monstrous as this one. However, with all this sort of gravitas that Hawthorne mustered, there is a pretty simple explanation, although not a lot of people online are talking about it because for whatever reason, I didn't find many people discussing, like, let's refute the whale eater cryptid and the saurian, the monstrous saurian in the ocean. But basically what I saw was people were saying this could just be a boat propeller.
Yeah, it could.
So unfortunately, this whale may have met its demise by running into a boat's propeller somehow.
Like, what's funny is you don't, like, so much of the story could have happened. It just, it's getting chased by something, whatever the fuck, and then it just happened to get into a boat propeller. His whole, like, theory, you really could have it happen almost exactly the same, just not have a prehistoric massive dinosaur thing biting it, and it just substituted in a boat propeller. So he was like 95% right.
Sure.
Is what I'm getting at here.
Yeah,
he just was like, there was one big detail that he got wrong.
Yeah, if we're being generous, I suppose. But yeah, I do think he's probably right about it beaching itself and just. But it's like, yeah, I don't know. There's no reason to assume that this thing wouldn't accidentally hit a fucking boat propeller, right? Like it's happened. It's a known thing. Like we fucking churn wherever manatees live, the waters churn red with propeller impelled blood of the manatee. Yeah. Like it happens all the time.
Plus, people keep mistaking them for sirens and
trying to fuck them and
trying. Yeah, it's really pretty bad.
Yeah. So, Niall, that is the whale eater. We could talk. There's so many sea serpents. Holy shit, there are a lot of sea serpents.
There's there's a lot of, like, if you try to start doing a bunch of Bigfoot variants, Nessie variants, sea serpent variant, like, finding the differentiating factors is always the hard part, but now we have classification.
Well, and I like that we could kind of cover a handful of stories with one idea of a cryptid, like a whale eater. Yeah. I like that. So that knocked out a couple of supposed sea serpent sightings. So, are you ready for a big question?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
All right. Whales are notoriously huge and pretty high up in the food chain, but the whale eater certainly keeps it in check. What other marine animal do you think needs a cryptid predator to keep its ass in check?
Okay. I did just watch Jaws yesterday, so I'm trying very hard not to
say shark.
Say Jaws, like great white sharks. Although, like, that's not the worst answer in the world.
Yeah.
But it just is kind of the obvious one. No, I got it. I look, I loved these things as a kid. I still like them a lot. I think they're really fascinating creatures. But I do think manta rays are oddly like terrifying in a certain way. Like they're really cool, but they ride that like cool and terrifying line in a way that it shifts by how close I am to them. As long as I'm not in danger of like being around one too closely, they're awesome. So, but I'm gonna say like a fucking manta ray killer.
Okay. And how would you kill it, with like a ray gun, or like an animal would be equipped with like a manta ray gun maybe?
So imagine like the it should have like a very wide mouth, because manta rays are very flat and wide. So I think like it's those like toys that shoot the discs, and it's like that little slot. I want that kind of mouth, but on a type of like big fucking like an oversized party pizza of a land creature, of a water creature.
Can you picture this creature like taking in the manta ray like one of those disc slot things on a disc shooter, and then it also has like a way to shoot it out, but it shoots the manta ray out of its orifice so fast and hard that it kills it?
Yeah, like it yeah, it doesn't eat them. It just it has like it's like a flat, it's like a pizza Kirby.
Oh god.
That just sucks it in for sustenance and then shoots it out.
All right. I like that. Do you want to know what mine is?
Yeah, what's yours?
I think we got to fucking knock the pistol shrimp down a peg, which if you know about the pistol shrimp, that thing can snap its claw down so hard that it like fucking hyper heats up the water around it and can like fucking shoot you basically.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
So I think what we need is a bigger shrimp that has like a Halo Needler style claw, where it can kind of shoot in the sort of like shooting pattern of the Needler. It just like a stronger gun, because this thing's firing just like a pistol.
So you're basically giving the ocean a bigger gun.
Yes.
So like you have the pistol shrimp, and you're basically positing you want to introduce the SMG shrimp.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
Okay.
And then of course, that shrimp's going to sort of necessitate another predator that keeps it in check, and that's when we start getting the shoddy shrimp in there. He's a shotgun sort of guy, but then of course the shotgun guy, he's close, proximity sort of battle, then would necessitate the operator rifle shrimp.
I'm going to go ahead and stop you right there and just jump forward and say that eventually I'm going to be the person that builds the BFG shrimp.
Yes.
And that's going to be, the shrimp to end all shrimps, and even Red Lobster will be scared.
Unfortunately, I think that this all actually ends at nuclear shrimps and mutually assured destruction shrimps. So that's, I think, the unfortunate end of all of this. So
death of the universe shrimp.
Yeah. So, wow, Niall, that was the whale eater and the saurians, the cryptozoological saurians.
We classified some cryptids.
Yes.
We talked about some big ass fucking crocodiles.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right.
You ready for some business, Niall?
Yeah. So you can find us on social media, as long as these sites exist, on Twitter at IGW Podcast.
You can follow us on Facebook.com/ItGetsWeirdPodcast.
And we're on all your favorite podcatchers. I think Stitcher is dead now, so not that one.
Yeah,
but Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, really anywhere you look for podcasts, we're probably there. Just look up It Gets Weird.
Twitch.tv/ItGetsWeird. Look, I stream on Twitch. Sometimes we do party streams too. We've done a couple things. But recently, I had to go an entire weekend without internet and power, so missed that one, unfortunately. But in the future, I promise there will be more streams. I did not account for Acts of God, but, give us a follow on there. We go live on the weekends usually and goof around, so check it out. Email us at itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com. Send us your favorite sea serpent sighting story or your favorite whale attack.
Yeah.
So also check out patreon.com/itgetsweird. We have a $2 tier and a $5 tier. At the $2 tier, you're going to get the show It Gets Weird TV, where we're discussing right now the X-Files Season 1. We watch a weird show on It Gets Weird TV. We have the patron donors vote on what show we get to watch. And it comes out every other week on Thursdays. Now, if you donate to the $5 tier, you get access to It Gets Weird TV, plus bonus episodes that come up on the off week of It Gets Weird TV. So you're getting bonus content every single week. I've said a lot of this business promo stuff at the end here. Very weird. Something is wrong with my brain.
We're just, look, everything's coming out a little weird today. I've been doing it too. Today I've been just acting very strange. I don't know. I'm not really a big astrology person, but something is up in the skies weird.
It's the full moon, probably.
Yeah, there you go.
I've been told. So yeah, at the $5 tier, you get access to weekly content. You also get access to videos on demand of the last week's stream whenever I do a stream. So that's also at the $5 tier. And whether you donate to the $2 tier or the $5 tier, you get access to the main show 2 days early on Friday instead of Sunday. And you get access to the Discord chat where we're all hanging out, chatting about fucking weird-ass cryptids, aliens, conspiracies, everything you can think of. We also have a $1 tier you don't get anything out of it. You're just kind of getting the satisfaction of donating to your favorite podcast. It's more of a tip than anything. You're saying, hey, I like your show. Here's $1. If you can't donate to the show, please tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your congressman all about It Gets Weird podcast.
All right. Thank you all for listening. This has been It Gets Weird. I've been Niall.
And I'm Kyle, signing out.